They embarrassed a waitress at a fancy party, pouring soda all over her while recording it on video. To bored billionaires, it was just another joke. What they didn't know was that her husband was a vampire king who had been hiding for 80 years, and they just gave him a reason to stop hiding. The crystal champagne glass broke on the marble floor, and nobody even looked. Nina Martinez had been serving very rich people for 3 years at the Palazzo Noir Resort, and she had learned one basic truth. People with too much money eventually run out of things to keep them entertained. Tonight, they had apparently decided that embarrassing someone would be fun. "Another round," shouted Marcus Hale, the tech billionaire whose face was on every money magazine. He was lying across a velvet couch, like a king on a throne, his fancy suit wrinkled, his eyes glassy from expensive whiskey. Around him, a dozen equally rich guests laughed at jokes that weren't funny and pretended to enjoy music that was too loud. The after-party had started at midnight. It was now 3 a.m, and Nina's feet hurt badly in her required high heels. "Yes, sir," she said quietly, moving toward the bar with practiced grace. Her white uniform was still perfect. She had made sure of that. In her old life, looking good had mattered even more than it did here. She was reaching for a fresh bottle when she heard it. "Hey, look at her," someone said, a woman's voice, slurred and mean. "She's been here for hours. Doesn't she ever smile?" Nina's hand stopped on the bottle. She knew better than to react. She had survived far worse than drunk rich people. "Maybe she's tired of serving peasants like us," Marcus said, and the group burst out laughing. Nina carefully poured the champagne, keeping her face neutral. The trick was to become invisible, to be like furniture, to let their words slide off like water. She was halfway across the room when Marcus stood up, phone in hand. Wait, he said, his voice suddenly sharp with excitement. "I've got a better idea. Johnson, you recording?" A man with slicked back hair raised his phone, grinning. "Live to the group chat. 2,000 watching." Nina's stomach tightened. She knew what live streams meant in this world. Permanence, evidence, exposure. "Come here, sweetheart," Marcus called out, curling his finger at her. Every instinct told Nina to run, but she had played human for too long to break character now. She walked toward him with the champagne tray, her face professionally pleasant. "Sir?" Marcus took a glass, not from the tray, but from the bar behind him, a full glass of Coca Cola, water dripping down its sides. Nina's enhanced senses caught everything. The fast heartbeat of someone about to do something cruel, the excitement in the room, the way Johnson angled his phone to capture her face. "You know what I think?" Marcus said, swirling the dark liquid. "I think you need to lighten up. Learn to have fun." He threw the Coca-Cola directly at her chest. The liquid hit like ice water, soaking through her white uniform in an instant. Brown cola stained the fabric, dripped down to her shoes, pooled on the marble floor. The room exploded in laughter. "Oh my God, her face!" someone shrieked. "Do you think she speaks English? Comprende? No? Comprende?" Nina stood perfectly still. Her hands, the dangerous part, were clenched at her sides. She could feel her fingernails getting longer into claws. She could feel her sharp teeth beginning to come out. The hunger, always there, but controlled, surged forward like a huge wave. "Not here. Not now." "She looks like a drowned rat," Marcus laughed, moving closer. "Hey, servant of the night, you going to cry? Going to—" Nina's eyes flicked up to meet his, just for a second. Whatever Marcus saw there made him take a step backward without meaning to. The laughter in the room stopped for a moment. Then Johnson spoke up, breaking the silence. "Holy dude, that was perfect. The stream's going insane." The laughter started again. Nina lowered her eyes, forcing her body back under control. Through pure willpower, she pulled the claws back in, made the fangs normal again. She had had 3 centuries to learn control. "I apologize for the mess," she said softly. "I'll clean it immediately." She turned and walked toward the service exit, her soaked shoes squeaking with each step. Behind her, she heard Marcus say something about immigrants and knowing their place, but the blood rushing in her ears drowned out the words. The service hallway was blessedly empty. Nina leaned against the cold wall, breathing carefully, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Human rhythms, human control. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aurelion. "When are you home?" She looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Soon." Another buzz, this one urgent. "Are you all right? I feel..." Of course he felt it. After 280 years of marriage, their connection was stronger than steel. He had sensed her rage across 12 miles of city streets. "I'm fine," she wrote. "Just a difficult customer." She finished her shift in a borrowed uniform, avoiding eye contact with everyone. At 5 a.m., as the sun began painting the ocean gold, she clocked out and walked to her car. Nina didn't know that in a fortified office building downtown, a computer program had already tagged her face from the live stream. She didn't know that facial recognition software was running her features through every database in existence, searching for a match. All Nina knew, as she drove home through the empty streets, was that she was tired of hiding, and that Aurelion, when he saw what they had done to her, would want blood. The question was whether she would be able to stop him, or if this time she wouldn't even try. The mansion sat on 3 acres of woods, deliberately separated from the coastal town below. No neighbors, no witnesses, just darkness and silence, the way Aurelion preferred it. He was reading in his study when Nina's car pulled into the driveway. Before she even opened the door, he knew something was wrong. The connection between them hummed with leftover fury, sharp and bitter. Aurelion set down his book, a first edition of Dante's Inferno, appropriately, and waited. Nina entered without a word. Her hair was damp, quickly washed. She wore a resort uniform that wasn't hers, too large at the shoulders. But it was her eyes that made Aurelion rise from his chair. They held something he hadn't seen in decades. Shame. "Nina, don't," she said quietly, moving past him toward the bathroom. "I just need to shower." He followed her, his supernatural speed putting him in the doorway before she could close it. "Tell me what happened." "It was nothing. Some drunk idiots being drunk idiots." "Your hands are shaking." Nina looked down at her trembling fingers, then curled them into fists. "I almost lost control, Aurelion, in front of 50 people and a live stream. Her voice cracked. "I almost became the monster they think we are." Aurelion crossed the space between them in a heartbeat, pulling her against his chest. She was cold, even for a vampire. "Tell me everything." So she did. Every detail, every word, every second of embarrassment. Aurelion listened in complete silence, his jaw tightening with each sentence. When she finished, Nina pulled back to look at him. "It's over," she said firmly. "I quit. I'll find work somewhere else, somewhere I don't have to..." "Show me the video." "Aurelion, show me." Nina's phone was still in her pocket. She pulled it up reluctantly, finding the clip that had been sent to her by a worried coworker. The video had been shared in some private group, but it was spreading. Aurelion watched in silence, watched his wife, his queen, be drenched in soda like a street beggar, watched them mock her accent, her dignity, her humanity. But what made his blood turn to ice was the final frame, where the camera zoomed in on the man's wrist. "Pause it there," he said, his voice dropping to a tone that made the windows rattle. Nina froze the frame. On Marcus Hale's cufflink, barely visible in the low light, was a symbol, a crescent moon cut by a dagger. "Oh God," Nina whispered, "that's..." "The Eclipse Syndicate."
Aurelion's eyes began to glow, faint red light coming from his eyes. It was an involuntary response, one he hadn't experienced since the 1940s. They're not just billionaires. They're hunters. Nina's face went pale. You think they knew? No, but they will soon. He pulled out his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. Within seconds, he had Marcus Hale's entire life displayed. Board memberships, political donations, shell companies. And there, buried in the footnotes of a subsidiary corporation, was the connection. Marcus Hale's venture capital firm had invested $200 million in biodefense technology, a polite term for anti-vampire weapons. They exposed your face to their network, Aurelion said, his voice eerily calm. Facial recognition will match you to old photographs, paintings, records. They'll know who you are by sunrise. Then we run, Nina said immediately. We've done it before. New identities, new continent. No. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Nina stared at her husband. In the dim light, he looked exactly as he had the night they met in 1745. Sharp features, midnight black hair, eyes that held centuries of memory. But now those eyes burned with something she had begged him to abandon. Wrath. Aurelion, we built a life here. A peaceful life. We agreed. They threw garbage on you and laughed. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of mountains. They humiliated the queen of the night court like she was nothing. Like we are nothing. We are nothing, Nina's voice rose. We're just two vampires trying to survive in a world that wants us dead. You gave up the throne for a reason. I gave it up for you, so you could have the human life you wanted. He cupped her face gently, but his hands were trembling with barely contained rage. But they've made that impossible now, haven't they? A knock on the door interrupted them. Soft, but deliberate. Aurelion's expression hardened. That would be Cassius. You called Cassius? Nina's eyes widened. Aurelion, he's your general. And an old friend. I need information. The man at the door was impossibly tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that screamed old money. Cassius had been Aurelion's right hand for 4 centuries. His presence meant only one thing. War was coming. 600 miles away, in a glass tower that pierced the capital's skyline like a shard of ice, Elias Vaughn was having the best morning of his career. Run it again, he said, leaning forward in his executive chair. The analyst, a nervous woman named Petrovich, tapped her keyboard. The video replayed on the massive screen. Nina Martinez getting doused in Coca Cola, her face captured in perfect high definition for exactly 23 seconds before she turned away. Facial recognition pinged 3 matches. First, a painting from 1889 housed in a private collection in Prague, subject identified as Katerina Noir, wife of a Romanian nobleman. Second, a photograph from 1934 Berlin, different name, Nadia Marchand, but same facial structure, same distinctive cheekbone pattern. And third, she pulled up a centuries-old sketch, a wanted poster from 1756, Nina Delacroix, suspected of witchcraft in France. Elias smiled. Not witchcraft, something far more valuable. Around a conference table sat the Eclipse Syndicate's inner circle, 12 individuals who collectively controlled more wealth than most nations. They didn't just invest in technology, they shaped it. Anti-aging research, genetic modification, and their newest obsession, supernatural biology. Gentlemen, lady. Elias stood, adjusting his Patek Philippe watch. We've spent $2 billion chasing rumors, funding expeditions to Transylvania, excavating crypts in New Orleans, analyzing blood samples that turned out to be theater props. And now, thanks to Marcus's drunken stupidity, we found something real. You're certain she's a vampire? Asked a Saudi prince on the video screen. 98% probability, Petrovich confirmed. No social media presence before 2022, no birth certificate, no medical records. She appeared in Connecticut exactly 3 years ago with perfect documentation that our team confirms is too perfect. Professional forgeries. And if she's here, Elias continued, then he is too. The room went silent. Everyone in the syndicate knew the legend, the vampire king, Aurelion, a creature supposedly over 1,000 years old who commanded armies of the undead during Europe's darkest centuries. Most thought he was myth, but Elias had spent 15 years following breadcrumbs, and every trail led to one conclusion: the king was real, and he had gone into hiding. "We humiliated her wife," said Dmitry Volkov, a Russian oligarch. "If the stories are true, he'll come for Marcus." "Let him," Elias replied coldly. "Marcus knew the risks when he joined us. He served his purpose. He was the bait." Marcus Hale, watching via video feed from his yacht, went very pale. "Wait, what? You're using me as bait? You said this was just about going viral." And it worked beautifully. Elias pulled up a map on the screen. He've triangulated her home address. Mansion, 12 miles outside town, registered to A. Crane. Convenient initials. We have thermal imaging showing 2 heat signatures, both abnormally low body temperature. We have grounds to move forward. Move forward with what? Marcus's voice cracked. Elias ignored him, turning to a man in a military uniform, Colonel Raymond Hardwick, former Special Forces, now the Syndicate's Director of Tactical Operations. "Colonel, status on extraction team." "Ready to deploy," Hardwick crisply said. 12 operators equipped with silver core ammunition, UV flashbangs, and neural inhibitors. We've also got the prototype restraint system, silver mesh nets coated in concentrated garlic extract. Someone snorted. "Garlic? Seriously?" "Old legends have surprising scientific basis," Petrovich interjected. "Elysin compounds in garlic interfere with vampiric cellular regeneration. Our tests on captured subjects confirmed." "You've tested on vampires?" Nina's coworker, who had forwarded her the video, would have been horrified to know she had been right to worry. "Lesser ones," Elias said dismissively. "Feral creatures, barely sentient. But Aurelion," his eyes gleamed. "Imagine what we could learn from a specimen of his age. His blood alone could be worth trillions. Regenerative properties, immortality factors, enhanced strength. We could patent the genetic sequences, create therapies, build an empire." "And if we can't capture him?" asked the Saudi prince. "Then we kill him," Elias said simply. "Either way we win. A dead vampire king proves they exist, which validates our entire research division. A live one, that's the scientific discovery of the millennium." Dmitry leaned back. "You're starting a war with creatures we barely understand." "We're seizing an opportunity," Elias corrected. "The supernatural world has hidden in shadows for centuries, hoarding power, manipulating human affairs. It's time we took what's ours. And it starts with the woman in that video." Petrovich pulled up a new image. Nina captured from resort security cameras, walking to her car at dawn. "Extraction team moves at 2200, Colonel Hardwick announced. "We take her alive, bring her to Facility 7, and wait for the king to come to us. Then we end this." Marcus's face on the screen was ashen. "And me? What happens to me?" Elias finally looked at him. You keep being visible. Keep live streaming. Keep playing the arrogant billionaire. If Aurelion comes for anyone first, better it's you than us." The call disconnected. Marcus stared at his blurred screen, alone on his yacht with his security team. For the first time in his privileged life, he understood what prey felt like. In the tower, Elias Vaughn smiled. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Cassius left at dawn, disappearing into the morning mist like a ghost. His parting words echoed in Nina's mind. "The syndicate doesn't negotiate, Aurelion. You know this."
Now, sitting in their kitchen as sunlight streamed through blackout curtains they had cracked open, Nina watched her husband pretend to be calm. He was reading financial news on his tablet, occasionally sipping from a crystal glass filled with blood, ethically sourced from a medical contact, something Nina had insisted on decades ago. "You're planning something," she said quietly. "I'm reading the news. You haven't turned the page in 10 minutes. Aurelion set down the tablet. In the morning light, he looked almost human, if you ignored the predatory grace in every small movement, the unnatural stillness when he breathed. I'm thinking about revenge, about survival.
He met her eyes. They know who you are. Cassius confirmed it. Facial recognition hit 4 databases in the syndicate's network. They've already sent surveillance to the town. It's only a matter of time before they... So we leave. Tonight, we have escape routes, false identities in 6 countries. And then what? Aurelion's voice remained soft, but something dangerous lurked beneath. We run for another decade, another century. Nina, I've been running since 1944. I gave up my throne, my court, my purpose because you wanted peace. I did it gladly, but there's a difference between choosing peace and being hunted like animals. Nina felt her chest tighten. I never asked you to give up who you are. Yes, you did. He said it without accusation, just fact. The night we met in Paris, you told me you were tired of the killing, tired of the politics and power plays. You wanted to see the world as humans see it, full of small joys instead of centuries-long schemes. I loved you enough to try. And you've been miserable. I've been content. Aurelion reached across the table, taking her hand. His skin was cool, familiar. But contentment isn't enough anymore, not when they think they can humiliate you without consequences. Nina pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. So, what's your plan? Storm into their headquarters? Kill them all? Prove every terrible thing humans believe about us? I'm considering options. You're considering war, Nina's voice rose. I know that look, Aurelion. I saw it in 1870, in 1914, in 1939. Every time humans did something that reminded you why you stopped trusting them, and every time it ended in blood and ashes. This is different. It's always different, and it's always the same. Nina was pacing now, 3 centuries of frustration pouring out. You tell yourself it's about justice, about protecting our kind, about teaching them respect. But really, you just miss being the king. You miss the power. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Aurelion stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of empires. I miss being able to protect what's mine. There's a difference. You're not a possession. You're my wife. The words cracked like thunder. My king, my partner for 3 centuries, and they treated you like trash while the world watched and laughed. Tell me honestly, Nina, do you feel nothing, no anger, no desire for justice? Nina stopped pacing. Her reflection stared back from the window. A small woman, 5'4", with delicate features that made humans underestimate her. She looked 30. She was 347 years old. Of course I'm angry, she whispered. I wanted to tear that man's throat out. I wanted to show them what a real monster looks like. Then why didn't you? Because I'm not that person anymore. I chose to be better. No, Aurelion said gently, moving closer. You chose to be smaller. There's a difference. The words hit like a slap. Nina turned to face him, tears she couldn't actually cry, burning in her eyes. I chose to live without fear, without constantly looking over my shoulder for the next threat, the next rival, the next war. You promised me we could have that. I kept that promise for 80 years, his expression softened. But they've made it impossible now. Cassius brought intelligence. The syndicate isn't just coming for us. They're planning to expose our entire kind. Use us for experiments. They have a facility where they've been torturing captured vampires, extracting blood, studying weaknesses. Nina felt ice crystallize in her veins. What? Cassius found it 3 days ago. He was investigating rumors. Aurelion pulled up a file on his tablet, showing her grainy photographs, cells with UV lights, restraint tables, vampires in various states of deterioration. 17 of our kind, Nina. Some of them were barely adults when they returned. The syndicate has been hunting and experimenting on them for 5 years. Nina stared at the images, horror and rage warring inside her. One of the prisoners looked familiar. A girl she had met briefly in Prague in the 1980s, turned at 19, who just wanted to paint and see the world. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Because I knew what you would say. Aurelion closed the tablet.
that we should alert authorities, work through proper channels, trust in human justice. But, Nina, they are the authorities. The syndicate has people in every government, every intelligence agency. There are no proper channels. Nina sat back down heavily. So, we're trapped. No. Aurelion knelt before her, taking both her hands. We fight back. But I need to know you're with me, not as a reluctant follower, but as my queen. Because if we do this, there's no going back to white uniforms and pretending to be human. Outside, a car pulled up to their gate. Aurelion's head snapped toward the window, his expression darkening. They're early. Nina's heart hammered. How many? Enough. He stood, his body already shifting into combat readiness. Stay inside. Let me No! Nina rose, feeling something she had suppressed for decades finally break free. We face this together. For the first time that morning, Aurelion smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. The car at the gate wasn't an attack team. It was worse. Through the window, Nina watched a woman in a postal uniform climb out carrying a certified package. Behind her, hidden in the tree line, thermal signatures bloomed in Aurelion's enhanced vision. 12 bodies, military formation, waiting. It's a distraction, Nina whispered. I know, Aurelion's fangs had already extended. They want us to open the door. The postal worker rang the doorbell, her heartbeat too steady, her movements too precise. Trained operative, not civilian. Nina could smell silver nitrate on her skin, a compound that burned vampires on contact. Mr. and Mrs. Crane, this is a certified delivery. Signature required. Aurelion moved to the door, then paused. Nina, when this starts, promise me you won't hold back. She met his eyes. After their argument, something had shifted between them. The careful distance she had maintained, the human mask she had worn, it was cracking. I promise, she said. He opened the door. The woman's smile was professional, her hand already reaching for something under her jacket. She never got there. Aurelion's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with enough force to shatter bone. The weapon, a UV grenade, clattered to the porch. Tell your team that they have 3 seconds to leave before I stop being polite. The woman's eyes widened, then into her collar mic. Target aware. Execute now. The windows exploded inward. Silver nets launched from 4 directions simultaneously, designed to entangle and burn. But Nina had already moved. Her vampire speed reduced the world to slow motion. She ducked under one net, twisted past another, and came up with her hand around the throat of an operative rappelling through the skylight. UV flash in 3, the man choked out. She threw him through the wall before the device could detonate. The flashbang went off in the garden, turning night into artificial day. Screams echoed as the operative burned. Aurelion, meanwhile, had pulled the postal worker inside and disarmed her in 2 efficient movements. Who sent you? Go to hell, leech. Already there, he dropped her unconscious and turned to face the real threat, Colonel Hardwick, standing in the doorway with what looked like a modified grenade launcher.
Aurelion Crane, Hardwick said. Or should I call you Your Majesty? I'm Colonel Raymond Hardwick, Eclipse Syndicate Tactical Division. You're coming with us. Ambitious. Aurelion tilted his head. Stupid, but ambitious. Hardwick fired. The projectile wasn't explosive. It was a silver net compressed into a canister, designed to expand on impact. Aurelion caught it mid-air and crushed it, silver burning his palm. He didn't even flinch. You tortured 17 of my kind, Aurelion said softly. Did you think there would be no consequences? Hardwick's confidence wavered. Fire team, light him up! UV beams lanced through the darkness from every angle. Nina screamed as one caught her shoulder, the light searing through clothes and skin. But Aurelion had already moved, faster than human eyes could track. He appeared behind 2 operatives, snapping their rifles and throwing them into the woods with enough force to break trees. Non-lethal, he called to Nina. "We need one alive." Nina, clutching her burned shoulder, felt her predatory instincts surge forward. The pain didn't weaken her, it enraged her. She launched herself at an operative trying to reload, disarming him and pinning him to the ground. Her fangs were fully extended now, inches from his throat. "Nina," Aurelion warned. She hesitated. The man beneath her was terrified, heart racing, blood pumping. It would be so easy. She hadn't fed from a living human in 60 years, by choice, by principle. But right now, with adrenaline and fury coursing through her, the choice felt irrelevant. "Please," the operative whispered, "I have kids." Something in those words penetrated the haze. Nina released him, stepping back. "Run." He ran. Hardwick, seeing his team decimated, pulled out his final weapon. A cylinder, marked with biohazard symbols. Biohazard aerosolized silver compound. Kills vampires in seconds. I press this button, we all die. Aurelion appeared beside him so quickly, Hardwick didn't even register movement. The cylinder was in Aurelion's hand before his finger could twitch. Amateur mistake, threatening a creature who survived wars you can't imagine. He crushed the cylinder, letting the silver dust fall harmlessly to the ground. His hand smoked and blistered, but he didn't react. "Now, you're going to deliver a message." Hardwick was hyperventilating. "What message?" Aurelion leaned close, his red eyes blazing in the darkness. When he spoke, his voice carried centuries of authority. "Tell Elias Vaughn that the king remembers. Tell him I know about the facility, about the experiments, about every crime the syndicate has committed against my kind. Tell him he has 72 hours to release the prisoners and dismantle his operation. And if he doesn't," Aurelion's smile was terrifying, "then I'll show him why humans used to fear the night." Aurelion released him. "Run along, Colonel, and take your broken soldiers with you." Hardwick stumbled away, gathering his wounded team. Within minutes, they were gone. Nina stood in the wreckage of their home, her shoulder already healing, adrenaline fading. "They'll come back with more." "I know." Aurelion examined his silver-burned hands. "That's why we're not waiting for them." "What do you mean?" He turned to her, and in his eyes Nina saw the king she had fallen in love with centuries ago. Dangerous, powerful, unstoppable. "I mean," he said quietly, "it's time to take back my throne." The cathedral had been abandoned since 1847, or so the historical records claimed. Its Gothic spires still pierced the sky 30 miles north of the city, surrounded by a forest that seemed darker than it should be. Locals avoided it, blaming bad cell service and weird vibes. They weren't entirely wrong. Beneath the cathedral, carved into bedrock over centuries, lay the Obsidian Court, the true seat of vampire power in North America. Nina hadn't set foot in it in 80 years. She had hoped never to return. "I forgot how oppressive this place feels," she murmured as they descended stone stairs that spiraled into darkness. Aurelion's hand found hers. "We don't have to do this. We could still—" "No." Nina squeezed his fingers. "You were right. Running won't work anymore. But promise me something. Anything. Don't become the monster they think you are. Stay the man I married." He kissed her forehead. I'll try. The stairs ended in a vast chamber lit by blue flames that cast no heat, witchfire, bound by ancient spells. Columns carved with forgotten languages supported a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow, and there, emerging from alcoves and shadows, were the vampires. Cassius appeared first, bowing deeply. "My king, my queen, welcome home." Behind him came others, some Nina recognized, Morgana, who had been turned during the Crusades, Victor, a Russian noble from Catherine the Great's court, Isabella, a Spanish conquistador who sought eternal life and found it at a terrible price. Others were younger, turned within the last century, their eyes filled with uncertainty. 13 vampires total, not the hundreds who had once filled these halls. "This is everyone?" Aurelion's voice echoed in the emptiness. "Many chose exile when you abdicated," Cassius said carefully. "Some joined other courts in Europe or Asia. Others simply vanished. These are the ones who remained. Loyal or desperate," Victor said bluntly. He was a massive man, 6'6", with a scar across his throat from a failed execution in 1762. "No offense, Aurelion, but you abandoned us. Why should we follow you now?" "Because the alternative is extinction," Aurelion replied. "The syndicate isn't just hunting me, they're hunting all of us. They have a facility where they torture and experiment on our kind. How long before they come for you?" Morgana stepped forward, her medieval dress rustling. "We've heard rumors, disappearances, young vampires vanishing from cities across the continent, but we assumed it was rogue hunters, not organized." "It's organized." Nina pulled out her phone, showing them the photographs Cassius had obtained. 17 prisoners, industrial-scale experimentation. They're weaponizing our biology. The vampires crowded closer, their expressions darkening as they scrolled through images. Isabella, who prided herself on control, hissed at one photograph. "That's Marco. He was turned in Buenos Aires 30 years ago. I thought he had simply moved territories." "He was captured," Aurelion said, 2 years ago. They've been bleeding him ever since." The chamber filled with angry murmurs. Victor slammed his fist against a column, cracking the stone. "Then we raid their facility, free our people, kill everyone inside." "And start an all-out war with humanity?" Nina challenged. "There are billions of them. Even if we could win, which we couldn't, what kind of world would be left? A world where we're not cattle for their experiments?" "Enough." Aurelion's voice cut through the argument like a blade. The witchfire flickered, responding to his authority. "Victor's rage is justified. Nina's caution is wisdom. We need both." He moved to the center of the chamber, where a throne of black stone sat empty. Nina had watched him place it there in 1944, swearing he would never sit in it again. Now he approached it slowly. "I walked away from this throne because I was tired of the politics, the territorial disputes, the endless power struggles between courts. I wanted peace. I wanted to love my wife without the weight of a crown. But peace was an illusion. The syndicate has been hunting us for years while we hid in shadows, and we did nothing." He turned to face them, but didn't sit. Not yet. I'm not asking you to start a war. I'm asking you to end one. A war the syndicate started the moment they began abducting and torturing our kind. We'll strike their facility, free the prisoners, and eliminate their leadership. Surgical, decisive, final." "And then what?" Morgana asked. Even if we succeed, the world will know we exist. Governments will respond with force. Let them try. Aurelion's eyes blazed red. For centuries, we've hidden because we feared exposure. But maybe it's time humans remembered why their ancestors feared the dark. Nina felt ice in her stomach. This was the part she dreaded. The moment when her husband stopped being the man who read poetry and started being the king who had conquered kingdoms. "There's another way," she said quietly. "We free the prisoners, but we expose the syndicate's crimes to the world. Show humanity what their protectors have been doing. Turn public opinion against them." "Naive," Victor scoffed. "Strategic," Nina countered. "We can't win a war of extinction, but we can win the moral high ground. Force the syndicate to answer for their crimes in public. Make them the villains, and suddenly, we're not monsters. We're victims of human cruelty." Aurelion studied her, something like pride in his expression. "You always were the clever one." "So we do both," Cassius suggested. "Military strike and propaganda campaign. Free our people, gather evidence, and make it impossible for governments to side with the syndicate." Isabella nodded slowly. "It could work if we're careful." "Careful died when they threw Coca Cola on my wife." Aurelion finally sat on the throne, the stone seeming to recognize him, witchfire blazing brighter. "We have 72 hours before they expect my next move. We use 48 to plan, 24 to execute. The facility first, then the syndicate's headquarters." "You want to hit them twice?" Victor grinned. "Ambitious." "They made it personal," Aurelion said simply. "I'm returning the favor." Nina watched her husband, crowned in blue fire and shadow, looking every inch the king she had fallen in love with and feared in equal measure. Around them, the vampires knelt, even Victor eventually, pledging their loyalty. The king had returned. Nina only hoped they would all survive what came next. The facility was a concrete box disguised as a pharmaceutical warehouse in an industrial district. No guards outside, all the security was internal. The syndicate hadn't expected anyone to find it, let alone attack it. They were wrong. At 2:47 a.m., Victor tore the loading dock door off its hinges. The alarm lasted 3 seconds before Morgana, moving like a shadow, disabled the security system. Aurelion led the strike team inside. 7 vampires against 40 armed guards. It wasn't a fair fight. The guards had silver bullets and UV lights. The vampires had centuries of combat experience and fury that had been building for years. Nina moved through the corridors like a storm, disarming guards with brutal efficiency but never killing. That restraint was her gift to Aurelion, proof they could win without becoming monsters. The holding cells were in the basement. 17 vampires, some barely conscious, all bearing signs of prolonged torture. Isabella found Marco chained to a wall, his body covered in silver burns, and let out a sound of pure anguish. "We have them!" Cassius reported through the comm. "But, Aurelion, the syndicate knew we were coming." Of course they did. Nina realized the moment she saw the empty executive office. This facility was bait. The real trap was elsewhere. "Where's Vaughn?" Aurelion demanded, gripping a captured scientist by the collar. "He's in the tower. He's waiting for you at headquarters. He wants you to come." Aurelion's expression darkened. "How many do they have there?" "Everything. Every weapon, every contingency. You'll die if you go." "Then I'll die as a king." Aurelion released him and turned to Nina. "Get the prisoners to safety. I'm ending this tonight." "Not without me." Nina stepped close, her voice dropping. "We started this together, we finish it together." In the tower, Elias Vaughn watched feeds from the facility with grim satisfaction. He took the bait. 30 minutes, Colonel Hardwork reported, his arm in a sling from their last encounter. "But, sir, we lost the facility. All prisoners freed. 14 guards dead." "Acceptable losses," Elias gestured to the penthouse around them. "This is where it ends.
We have solar bombs on every floor, UV grids, silver gas. This entire building is a death trap designed for one target, and he's coming right to us." What Elias didn't know was that Nina had made one call before leaving the facility, not to vampire allies, but to someone she had met years ago during her human disguise, Rebecca Park, investigative journalist for The Washington Post. "Rebecca, it's Nina Martinez. Remember when you said if I ever had a story, you'd listen? I'm sending you files right now. Publish everything." 23 minutes later, Aurelion and Nina stood outside the mirrored tower, looking up to 70 floors of glass and steel. Around them, the rest of the vampires spread out, ready to breach multiple entry points. "This is insane," Nina said softly. "Probably." Aurelion took her hand. "Last chance to walk away. I didn't marry you for the easy life." They entered through the lobby. The building was empty, evacuated hours ago. Only Vaughn and his core team remained, 40 floors up in the fortified penthouse. The elevator doors opened on the 40th floor to reveal a kill corridor. Silver-lined walls, UV emitters, automated turrets. Aurelion smiled grimly. "Victor, your moment." Victor charged forward, absorbing the UV beams that would have killed lesser vampires. His massive frame took silver rounds as he destroyed each turret systematically. Behind him, the others surged through. They climbed. Every floor brought new defenses, new pain. Morgana took a silver round through the shoulder. Cassius was nearly caught in a collapsing trap. But they were relentless, pushing upward toward the penthouse where Elias waited. On the 69th floor, the Syndicate's final defense activated. Solar bombs, designed to flood entire floors with artificial sunlight. Nina saw it coming, shoving Aurelion behind a support column as the world turned white hot. She felt her skin begin to burn, smelled her own flesh cooking. And then it stopped. Cassius had found the control room 2 floors down and cut the power grid. The building plunged into darkness. Vampire territory now. They reached the penthouse to find Elias Vaughn standing alone, impeccably dressed, holding a detonator. "One button," he said calmly, "and this entire building comes down. We all die together." "You'd kill yourself?" Aurelion asked. "To eliminate you?" "Absolutely. The Syndicate survives regardless, but the world needs to know vampires can be killed." "The world already knows something else." Nina stepped forward, holding up her phone. The Washington Post's website glowed on the screen. Pharmaceutical giant exposed. Secret facility tortured supernatural beings. Elias's face went pale. Every photograph, every document, every victim's testimony, published 15 minutes ago. It's already viral. You're not a hero killing monsters. You're a war criminal, Elias. You're bluffing. His own phone buzzed. Then again. And again. News alerts. Board members calling. Government agencies demanding answers. Aurelion moved with supernatural speed, crushing the detonator in Elias's hand. "You made a mistake," Aurelion said. "You thought we were monsters hiding in shadows. But we're survivors who have outlasted empires. And you're just another human who forgot that cruelty has consequences." He grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground, his fangs extended, and for a moment Nina thought he would finish it. Then Aurelion set him down. "Kneel," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority. Elias's legs buckled involuntarily. Around them, Syndicate members emerged from hiding, all falling to their knees under the Prysic pressure of a vampire king's command. "Broadcast this," Aurelion told Cassius, who had hacked into the building's security system. "To the world. For centuries. We've hidden. No more." He released his hold on Elias, who collapsed, gasping. Outside, sirens wailed. The authorities were coming. The world will never be the same. 3 weeks later, the world was still reeling. Nina stood on the cliff top where she and Aurelion had married in 1745, a windswept overlook where ocean met sky. Back then, they had been alone, 2 creatures choosing love over the politics of vampire courts. Now, as dawn threatened the eastern horizon, they weren't alone anymore. Behind them, representatives from 12 governments waited at a careful distance. The UN had demanded a summit. Aurelion had refused initially, But after the syndicate's crimes went public and 3 more illegal facilities were discovered across Europe, suddenly everyone wanted to negotiate with the Vampire King. "You don't have to do this," Nia said softly. "We could still disappear. New identities, new continent." "We tried that," Aurelion adjusted his suit, custom made, black as midnight. He looked every inch the monarch now. "It didn't work because we were hiding from a truth. This world has never been just human. We've been here all along, and pretending otherwise only gave people like Vaughn permission to treat us as experiments instead of persons."
Nina watched the sun creep toward the horizon. They had maybe 10 minutes before they would need to retreat to the sheltered pavilion. And if they try to kill us anyway? Governments don't negotiate with those they fear. Then they'll learn the same lesson the syndicate learned. Aurelion turned to face her, taking both her hands. "That we're not interested in conquest. We're interested in coexistence, but we'll defend ourselves without apology." Movement behind them. Ambassador Chen from China approached cautiously. "Your Majesty, we're ready when you are." Your Majesty. 3 weeks ago, that title had been legend. Now it was diplomatic protocol. The negotiation was held in the pavilion as sunrise painted the sky gold and crimson. Nina sat beside Aurelion at a table that had been ancient when America was colonies. Across from them, diplomats from the US, China, Russia, the EU, and a hastily formed Supernatural Affairs Commission. "Let's be clear," said Ambassador Richardson from the United States, a woman whose career had been counterterrorism until 3 weeks ago. "Your people freed prisoners and exposed criminal activity. We're grateful. But you also invaded sovereign territory, caused millions in property damage, and revealed the existence of vampires to a world that's, frankly, terrified." "You're welcome," Nina said sweetly, "for stopping the atrocities your agencies somehow missed for 5 years. Richardson's jaw tightened. "We're not here to assign blame." "Aren't you?" Aurelion's voice was quiet, but it silenced the room. "Because from where I sit, humanity has spent centuries hunting us, experimenting on us, and pretending we don't have the same right to exist that you do. The syndicate wasn't an aberration. It was just the most organized version of what's been happening for generations." "So what do you want?" asked the Russian representative. "Reparations? Territory? Recognition?" Nina leaned forward. "We want vampire rights codified in international law. Protection from experimentation, from illegal hunting, from being treated as creatures instead of citizens. We want what you already give humans, basic dignity." "And in return?" Ambassador Chen asked carefully. Aurelion gestured to a folder Cassius had prepared. "We register with governments, provide census data, submit to reasonable oversight, reasonable, not invasive. We also offer our resources, medical knowledge from centuries of studying immortality, historical perspectives on conflicts you're repeating, even economic investment. We've accumulated considerable wealth over the years." "You're offering to integrate," Richardson sounded skeptical. "We're offering to stop hiding," Nina corrected. "We've been your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends for centuries. The only thing changing is honesty." The negotiations lasted until sunset. Some diplomats were hostile, others surprisingly open. The EU representative admitted they had been preparing protocols for supernatural contact since the 1970s. Russia claimed they had known about vampires for decades and had a non-aggression pact with several Eastern European courts. By nightfall, a framework existed, the Prague Accords, named for the city where formal treaties would be signed. Vampires would receive protected status in exchange for transparency. Details would take years to finalize, but the foundation was set. As diplomats left, Ambassador Chen lingered. "Off the record, you terrified them. Richardson will never admit it, but when you spoke, everyone in that room felt something, like prey recognizing a predator." "We are predators," Aurelion said simply. "Pretending otherwise helps no one. But predators can choose not to hunt." "Can they? Or will there always be someone like you,
powerful enough to reshape the world on a whim, and we just have to hope they're benevolent. Nina answered, "Welcome to how we've felt about humanity for centuries. You have nuclear weapons, biological warfare, technology that could end all life on Earth. We just have to hope you're benevolent too." Chen smiled grimly. "Fair point." She left. Alone on the clifftop, Nina and Aurelion watched the moon rise over an ocean that had witnessed countless empires rise and fall. "Do you think it'll work? Real peace?" "Honestly, I don't know." Aurelion pulled her close. "But for the first time in centuries, we're not hiding who we are. That's worth something." Nina thought about the resort, about serving drinks to people who saw her as invisible, about the moment Coca Cola soaked through her uniform and she nearly lost control. That woman felt like a stranger now. "No more waitressing?" she asked with a slight smile. "You're a queen. Queens don't serve anyone." "Technically, queens serve their people." "Then it's good we have people again." Aurelion gestured to the lights below, the city where freed vampires were being relocated, where Cassius was establishing a new court, where the world was slowly, painfully adjusting to a truth it had denied. In the distance, a news helicopter circled, CNN trying to get footage of the vampire summit. Nina waved at it sarcastically. "They're going to make our lives impossible," she predicted. "They already did. At least now we can fight back openly." A message buzzed on Nina's phone. "Rebecca Park, your story's been nominated for a Pulitzer. Coffee sometime? I have questions." Nina laughed, showing Aurelion. "The journalist wants an interview." "Tell her I charge by the hour. I'm very expensive." "You're ridiculous." "I'm a king. It comes with the territory." He turned serious, cupping her face. "Thank you." "For what?" "For stopping me from becoming the monster I could have been. For reminding me that power without conscience is just tyranny." He kissed her forehead. "You would have burned the world for you. You made me save it instead." Nina leaned into him, feeling the bond between them, 3 centuries strong and growing stronger. "We saved it together. That's what partners do." Below in the city, the first integrated supernatural human community center was opening. Morgana had volunteered to teach history. Victor, improbably, had taken up youth counseling. The 17 freed prisoners were adjusting, healing, learning to live without fear. It wasn't perfect. Hate groups were already forming. Some governments were refusing to sign the accords. Violence would come. It always did. But for tonight, standing on a cliff where they had once hidden from the world, Nina and Aurelion faced the future without masks. The king and queen weren't hiding anymore.